Ohayou gozaimasu.
We're Kim and Alicia Evans, and we just returned Thursday from our short little mission trip to Japan. We were there mid-October to just Thursday, and we were working at Karuizawa Retreat Center. It's a team mission camp, we would call it in America, where missionaries and local Japanese pastors and churches, and basically it's open to most anyone that want to come and spend vacation time or have retreats or conferences. And my role when I'm there is to, this time, to close up the cabins that they don't use November through, or October through December, because of no insulation or perhaps the pipes would freeze, that type of thing. So I go in and close up those cabins, remove all the linen and bag it up and make sure there's nothing left for mice to destroy, that type of thing. And then also clean cabins in between that are open in between visitors that come, and make sure they're ready for the next people, make the beds and make sure the coffee pot's cleaned out, that type of thing that you might forget when you're leaving. So those were my main duties. And then because this is not as busy a time as in the summer, if I have extra time, then there's always little projects for me to do. They have a attic above one of the cabins, and it seems like things collect in there, so I go up there and discard things that they don't really need to have there. And in the discarding process, it's separated into different types of plastics because Japan is very conscious on their waste. And so the plastics are separated, the tins are separated, glass is separated, all that good stuff. But Kim was the final authority on that. I did my best, and then he'd go through and do that. So that was my responsibility, most of the things that I did there, other than to try to keep Kim on task. Because as he will share, he had a project that was had a timeline, and so I encouraged him to stay on task. We bring greetings from Tim and Katie Cole. They're missionaries with team that serve in that area. They're our neighbors when we go there, and we send greetings from them. They send their love and hellos, and I ask you to pray for them as they work there in Japan in their different ministries. Katie has a ministry to international students. There's an international high school there, grades 10 through seniors, where teenagers from around the world come and are, it's not a Christian school, and so they're fed worldly philosophies, and which is very unfortunate, but that's what it is. But Katie has been able to get in there and have a Bible study on Wednesday nights with whatever students want to come. And I think this is her third year doing this. So it is a needed ministry. Some that come are Christians that come to her Bible study. Some are not. They're just curious. And so she has an opportunity to reach these teenagers from other countries. She has one young man she shared with me that comes, and he doesn't speak any English, but he still comes. So that's kind of a unique situation there. So do pray for the Coles as they minister there. We didn't have much vacation time this time. We did not ride a train one time. We were on such a timely schedule this time around. So that was unique. If we got to use the camp car a little more this time because of it not being as busy of a time for the other people that use the car. But most of our coming to and fro was walking, and so that was good. The weather there is about like it is here, where we serve. There is, a southern part of Japan where it's warmer, more tropical, and there's a northern part of Japan that's has colder weather, but the weather right there where we serve is more like it is here. So they're having cold weather. That area will get some snow later on, but we just had a dusting one time before we left. So we thank you very much for the opportunity to have gone and served. It was kind of a strange feeling. It felt kind of like going home when I got there. Very, very unique because, we learned a lot of things before when we were there, and now this time things were familiar. The grocery store was more familiar. Speaking to Japanese people in English and listening to them talk to you in Japanese was familiar. Trying to pick out words that I might know what they're talking about. It was remembering how to ask for that donut or that treat. So in that way, it was a different feeling. I felt like I, was back home again. We did get to participate in one church mostly. It was a Japanese-speaking church, so most of the time the sermon was in Japanese, and we had people there that would sit beside us and translate some of the sermons. It's a church that is without a pastor, so you might pray for them that they would get a pastor, and it would be ideal if they got a bilingual pastor, one that spoke Japanese and English, but the church has been there for a long time and has survived without a pastor. So I'm not sure what the Lord is doing in that situation, but we were able to attend that place and minister to them, reach out to the Americans that are in the church and sort of holding it together. And there's 2 teenage girls there that were born in the United States. They have a Japanese father, and they and their mother attend there. They were part of the founding of that church, the mother was. And so we sort of ministered to those 2 teenage girls, gave them a little bit of an American influence, Christian American influence. But I do thank you very much for the opportunity to go back. They want us to come back, of course. They want us to come back full time, but I'm not sure that that's what the Lord has for us. So I have to do a work in our hearts and work a lot of things out for that to happen. But they're saying, if you can't come back full time, they'd like us to come back again next September for 3 months. So we'll see. We told them we would pray about it. We're not sure, but pray for the country. The Olympics is going to be there this summer, so there's going to be a lot of outreach as far as Christians and sharing of the gospel. We know of a team that is going to be located there at the camp. They're coming from Australia, and they'll be traveling into Tokyo every day, which is over an hour to get to Tokyo to do their ministering. So pray for them. There's a big opportunity for Japan to hear the gospel again. Since the Olympics are going to be there, there'll be lots of Christians sharing the gospel. So pray for Japan at that time. It's really interesting. That place that we stayed has history from before the war of missionaries serving there, and yet there are so few Christians in the total Japan. It's hard to understand why it is that way, but it is. I mean, team considers Japan an unreached people group, and so even though they're modern, they are without Christ. So pray for them.
Okay, my turn. Again, I just do want to thank everyone that helped support us both in prayers and financially on this last trip we took. We really appreciate it. We wouldn't have been able to go without your help. And we are glad to be back. We're a little bit tired, kind of transitioning into that jet lag, trying to get a little rest. But it seems like I mentioned this to our Sunday school class this morning. As soon as we got over there, we got over on I think it was a Thursday or whatever, but got a chance to go to Costco to get a few things for our stay there, and I think 1 or 2 days later the typhoon hit, so we lost power for 24 hours, something like that. And so it was raining, and then it rained like the first, I think about the first week and a half, and we didn't really get a chance to do too much because it was raining. But then when I first started helping out, we did leaf burning. And I do apologize, I was trying to get a short presentation up, but it just didn't work. I have Windows, and they don't have Windows. I have Apple, and they have Windows, and so the two don't mix too easy. And last time I got it working, but this time I just couldn't get it working. But I just wanted to show you some pictures that we took of our trip there. It was a short little slide presentation to give you a little idea of some of the things that I was doing. But the main thing that they wanted me to do was to renovate a kitchen in one of the old rusty cabins. It had a rotted spot in the floor in the kitchen, so we took everything out, and so I had to replumb it. I had to rewire, put some wall plugs in because they only had like 2 plugs in the whole house, and so I was working on that the whole time I was there. But it's not like you can go like to Walmart, or not Walmart's, but Lowe's or Menards and just go pick up what you need. You got to go to stores that are specific, and they don't actually have this stuff because Japan isn't quite to the point where we're at on the do-it-yourselfers. They're just starting in, and some of the places, the bigger cities, have more than what we have up there because we're way out kind of in the countryside. So it was a little difficult, so I had to wait for some material to come up through Gerald, who was the head of all the maintenance and all the buildings that team owned. So he would bring his truck up, and he would bring stuff to me, wood, and then some tools that I was waiting for. But I ended up building a kitchen cabinets, and Tom, you'll appreciate this, that I'd never done before. So YouTube, you can learn a lot on YouTube. It really helped out. So I got a chance to learn, and that was good. But Alechia helped me stay on track and made sure I did that. But as Alechia mentioned, we did have a chance to fellowship with several different churches. The one we went to on Sundays, mostly while we were there, was a new one for us that we ended up going there because of the people that the Lord had brought to the retreat center to help. They came earlier than us, and they were there about 2 weeks after we got there. And they were from Hawaii, and they were both Japanese. And she spoke Japanese because she was born in Japan, but he didn't speak Japanese. And they were an older couple. And I thought about this. I said, I'm getting a little older doing all this stuff. Well, he was 80 years old. And so I thought, wow. And he would walk around in flip-flops because he was just used to being in Hawaii. But I couldn't believe it. But he helped out. He was helping me burn leaves when I got there. And in Hawaii, you don't burn leaves. You just send them to the dump or something. I don't know. But anyways, that was the first time, so that was a real change for him. Then we got to go to one of the churches that Tim Cole and them started up in the mountains a couple hours away. They're also without a pastor, so you can pray about that church. So, Japan is a very needy place. And as we mentioned, there's so much idol worship and family worship in Japan, and that's kind of holding them back. But we did have a good time at the one church. A pastor came out of Tokyo. He was Japanese, and he gave a testimony about his being saved through a missionary that was in the war, that came back after the war, and he accepted Christ. And it was one of the very few testimonies I've ever heard about a Japanese totally going, and it took him a very short time. He heard the gospel and he believed, and God just drew him in, and he's been a Christian ever since, and he's like 85 years old, and he became a pastor. And that was just a blessing for us to hear his testimony. We also went to a Thursday night Bible study that we had been to before called Shalom Bible Study, which is an English-speaking Bible study. We had a chance to fellowship there. And then another church that we went to before, they had a Christmas carol sing-along that we went to that called the Shinshu Church. And we just really appreciated the fellowship that we had in Japan. Being English speakers, you do kind of miss speaking in English, even though we had each other. But a lot of the churches that are like the Bible study, that's why we got together, so we could have it in English and talk with each other. We did also get a chance to visit where the Riffles, and some of you wouldn't know who the Riffles are. Dave knows who the Riffles are. They had come here and on deputation one time for us to take them on. But their church was about an hour away from where we were at. We had a chance to go visit them, and they were in the process of baking cookies to take to the hospital and pass out along with tracts and so forth. So we had a good fellowship with them and see how they're ministering. I'll be talking to Dave more about that later on. But again, we just want to thank you all for your support of us in both the prayer and financially. And we, again, wouldn't have been able to go without the help that you've given us. And the Lord provided everything we need. He kept us both healthy. We didn't get sick at all. And that was kind of a miracle also, because usually I have a lot of sinus problems. But anyways, so thank you again for your time and support of us.